Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemaphilepod.com. After 26-year-old Sumi suffers an accident on the streets of wintry Winnipeg, her overbearing mother, Sara, flies in from Seoul to be by her now comatose daughter's side. Desperate to ensure Sumi will have someone to look after her in the future, Sara embarks on a mission to catfish a suitable Korean husband before her daughter wakes up. It's a wonderful film. Really, so much of this film is the heart of this film is the humanity and the performances by someone we'll get into in a minute who does a wonderful job. One of the actors who is wonderful in this film called The Mother and the Bear. We're joined today by the director, John Ma. Johnny or John?
Yes. Well, that's very funny. Nobody's called me John Ma since I was, I don't know, 14 because
Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah. No, it's all good because that is me. That is me, like, so, but it brings back a lot of good memories because, yeah, since I was 19, 20, I think when I moved to university, I told people, I'm like, hey, just call me Johnny. I mean, it flows better. And in some way, as an immigrant, just because it's connected to the story, as like the immigrant is a particular kind of experience, and especially this moment, sort of what's going on in the world, there's kind of like a target on the immigrant's back, and I don't, I get it. I understand this is always easiest to blame the outsiders kind of thing. But, to understand that experience of moving to a completely new country, don't speak the language, don't understand the culture, don't eat the food and then like survive, So me as a 10-year-old, my mom gave me an English name because she had heard that, like kids make fun of other people's names, So she thought that my name, being a Chinese name that's different, would be a target. And so it was John. And it was very traumatic as a 10-year-old to be an immigrant, So when I grew up a little bit and I thought, I moved around a little bit. And so one things that kids do is that, they can try out different personas of themselves, And so, yeah, so John was between 10 and 17, 18. And after when I went to university, I told everybody, I said, call me Johnny. And I mean, it's very funny. I think back in retrospective now, like this is how we build our own persona in some way. And the second half of our life is to, going back to find out who we really are,
Absolutely. Well,
Anyways,
well, you did it in a way. You did a description of this film, just what you're
yes,
recounting. It's very
yes,
much in that vein
yes,
of.
yes.
Was there some particular inspiration that triggered it? It sounds like the big picture is that, but was there something in particular that inspired this?
When you have an intention to do something, it could be something very, very simple, So the actual inspiration of this film was just like a little thing, It was a meeting of a particular woman who became the inspiration for the main character. But obviously that spark wouldn't have happened if something wasn't happening in my life that was yearning to kind of see this particular woman that was not of my culture because I'm Chinese and Canadian, and she was Korean. And here was this woman that even though Korean culture and Chinese culture is a little similar, but it's still a very different culture. That what I experienced was like, oh, this is kind of like my mother, and I can understand her perspective because here's this person who is honest with me as a someone else that is not her, like son or daughter. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful moment that I don't know what this is, but let's put the idea of trying to write a story from it. I had no idea if anyone's going to help me make this film because at the time when I came up with this idea, the idea of putting a 55-year-old Korean woman as a lead of a North American movie is just insane. Who's going to put money into this? Like that there, from even when I think about the market, I was just like, that doesn't exist, But there was a particular moment in time when suddenly that was okay, by the capitalistic system. So I got the opportunity to wiggle it through, and somehow a Chinese Canadian film director got to make a Korean movie, like so so when I say that there's some divine magic that comes to us that all of us come together and we're all little pieces of jigsaw puzzles of it, like a bigger picture, and even you and I having this conversation right now, the fact that you are you drove 9 hours and you're a little woozy. And so, so we're in this state where we're a little bit loose, and even this is a part of
Mhm.
that experience, I think.
From what you just described, was there something about that opportunity, that sort of parting of the ways for you to make this film that did anything in the way that you thought about the story or the how you thought about making the story or casting or
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. Everything, like the North American system, it's kind of like a river, I think about it, right? You have strong currents that pushes you this way and that way. As a filmmaker, as an artist, you have to flow with the river because if you don't flow with the river, you are going to have a very difficult time and you might die, So if you're loose enough to flow with the river and embrace the opportunity that like if this road starts to close off, you move to the other one. So, for example, they really like the film was written as a story. I didn't think about genres. They asked me to make it a romantic comedy because that might sell, better. So I listened to it because they were the producers are my collaborators. So I thought, okay, well, let me think about this. And I thought, well, because the character is Korean, so maybe let's look at some Korean dramas, but I thought, well, these are not very interesting for me, but let's look at the history of where these telenovelas, romantic comedies, this kind of like sweet movies, where they
Mhm.
come from, like, and what's the basis of it. And it has a long history. Melodramas, are some of the oldest stories, and, in civilization, always when humans cannot feel in their real life because they're repressed and they're in some kind of difficult places, telenovelas, those are the places where they watch, So if you look at where this genre, I'm talking about like daytime soap operas, telenovelas, K-dramas, who watches them? It's a lot of like where cultures are more strict, where people are not allowed to have to live in a certain role. Those are the places where they need these kind of genres the most, And the oldest melodrama in the world is the story of the Red Rod Ribbon. Sorry, like telling your kid the story is that, hey, it's dangerous out there. Don't go too far, like, and that's the story that usually have a beast in it, like a wolf, like the wolf grandma, like it's usually a wolf or a bear. So that's where like if I wouldn't have come up with that if I didn't follow the river and just pick up little things that I thought were interesting to me. So the fact that the film ended up the way it is a miracle. Like took the opportunity and I went down this river. And I'm not going to say it's all beautiful, because as we discussed before, making a film in the last couple of years in the North American culture, you're seeing a lot of things that have never happened before. Unfortunately, in this system of house of cards, people don't tell you the truth. You have to find out the truth for yourself. So you kind of feel like you're being gaslit a little bit. But the film is what's in front of you is something that the artist that you're speaking to made and was made with the forces of nature that is the last few years, including all of the craziness that is out there in this world. So, and that's a beautiful miracle to celebrate, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, it is. And you're also describing flexibility, which is one of the key things in life for you mentally, physically, spiritually, the flexibility
Yes.
to adopt, adapt, and improve. That's something I heard many years ago, and that's sort of a mantra I like to live by. Adopt, adapt, and improve. Okay, this is my
Yes.
situation. Here we are. Let's figure out a way forward. And this film, and in ways that is reflected in the story, Sara comes to visit Sumi, and obviously the precursor is something that's happened to her that's put her in danger. Mom comes into the picture, and as a lot of these kind of stories go, she's trying to figure it out. She's trying to figure out how she can, first of all, help her daughter get through this, but also as she begins to adapt her own life to where she is. And one of the things about these kind of stories, because as you said, these are sort of an evergreen place for people who want to tell a story to go, is this film. What I found to be this one of the real strengths of it, first the performance by Kim Ho-jung is wonderful. She did a great job, but also you come right up to the imaginary line of being believable and relatable to something that's more mawkish and maudlin. And you don't go over that line, which I really appreciate in the film. about the film and about the telling of the story. Was that something you were consciously kind of you had your radar up if you felt like you got to that point?
Well, okay, let's go. We'll back up just a little bit in terms of here's a Chinese Canadian filmmaker making a Korean cultured movie with a character that is a 55-year-old female. So there's a lot of like, I'm on dangerous grounds here, in let's say, how do I say this? In the politically correct world, and I'm a believer that, artists should be able to be free to tell the kind of stories they want. However, with the context of history and sort of what's been going on with representation, it's very important to be sensitive to what is going on, and the journey of that. It's important to be flexible, but it's also important to have an artistic integrity, and the artistic integrity is that here's a character that doesn't get put on screen very often. So when you put this character on screen and you put this culture on screen, you better do your homework. You better do the homework and you better bring the community together. You better listen to them and you better let it infuse through your body. But ultimately, you understand it's your work. The realist situation was that I was the only Asian person in the room, So in terms of anything that comes from a culture perspective, I had to be very, very clear in terms of what is the line, the boundaries of that I would not cross, because it's my name on it. I am the filmmaker that is making the film. Sometimes people just give you opinions from their perspective, but they don't know, they don't know. And even for myself, like I am not a female, but my editors were like I work with females, and I was wanting to make sure that they like, really, really bring in that touch, to make sure that we're really honing this character in a way that is respectful but also sincere. So the character that you're talking about, she plays the character to the line of melodrama. And I thought about that, like a lot of things that you have to come from a way of theory, but also it has to be emotional. And the theory is that in some way, this film is made by Sumi, meaning it could be even her dream. So in her perspective of her mother is a little kooky, so that's justifies that way because it's a caricature, it's a stereotype that we all have of our parents. And then later on, as the film starts to really open up, you start to really learn about Sara as a human being, as an individual, as a not just a mother, not just a wife, but like just an individual, not even a woman, but like just an individual who's having a human experience, So that's how we do it because it's with integrity to the humanity that's in all of us, I think.
Yeah, and another thing about the way the story unfolds is that the reveals, they seem unforced, I would say. And that's
Yes.
another part about the storytelling is the reveals at some point are unexpected and at other points they just feel like this is the appropriate movement of the story. This is where we should be going. But when you get through that part of the film, you go, yeah, okay, that's right. I mean, just
Yeah.
sort of reinforcing what you've been saying, but it does feel that way.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and I think that, playing with genres, it was an interesting thing that opened up a new form of storytelling for me, because I think if this story was told in a much more like direct, naturalistic way, a lot of these twists and turns would start to feel like, oh, this is way too many, or something like, but in the context of a genre of a fairy tale, I would even say that because, the beginning of the film starts in a way that reminds you of those old stories, like in the
Mhm.
film, the reason why it's called The Mother and the Bear is catering on the first stories that you read to your children to tell them, hey, it's a scary world out there, like don't go too far from us. We're your parents, we're your protectors. So this is a play on that, that the mother and the bear, and now, but rather than telling the story of the Red Riding Hood, the little girl who gets, eaten or like has this adventure, you're telling the story about the mother who learns, oh, nature is not scary, if you just step into it, because Winnipeg was the metaphor of nature. See?
And there's another performance in here that I really enjoyed was Sam, who's
Yes,
played by Wan J. Lee.
yes.
And he again brings this kind of introspective, quiet, but his character evolves over the course of the film and in relation to Sarah, but also in relationship to the rest of his life as well.
like I said, I put together the sandbox, and all these individuals who are artists and human beings, came to this story. And like, think about this. How does somebody in my generation tell a story about love, in that generation,
Right.
that I've only seen through my parents? So I had to really trust them, and I had to really ask them, and they're so brave and trusting that to allow themselves to be shown in that way, because I one of the proudest things that I am is that I depicted, something that I felt, when my mom and my dad, would like their ethics and their morals and their world background, in that way. And that's all them. I just roll the camera, I give them the context of what it is, and they're speaking in a language that of course I don't speak, so I had to really trust my collaborators to bring the human, the truth to it. So they brought a lot of that. And one J, for him, he is this character, he is in the culture context, it would be termed goose dad, which is Korean fathers who traveled back and before, North America and Korea, which is their work, the source of income to provide for the family. So he was this character that was in a very different way, almost exercising, some of like his real life story that never got told, is getting told in this fictional, melodramatic way, which is so fun. We get to play, but also it's very healing. So I think that that's the combination of the melting pot.
The Mother and the Bear. Now, where will we be able to see this? It's releasing, what's the date on the release? Is it
I believe it's January 2nd in New York and January 9th in LA. Unfortunately, this day in the world, distribution is one of where the system is really showing its cracks, so unfortunately that is the case. So, I think we have to trust, the film is now in a river and it's flowing down a very hard river with a lot of rapids. And, I am like the parent that is letting go of this child, and I have to trust. So, I think that as an artist, you put out a piece of work and you have to just trust that it lives in the world now. It's going to have its life, and it doesn't get seen, for 50 years, 100 years, but that's the trust that you give to the bigger story, let's say.
I think that is an incredibly salient observation. You just don't know. You can't control it. So, and again, to your sensibility about it, I applaud you for that. There are some high profile people involved with this project, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't point out Pablo Larrain has come aboard as an executive producer. First of all, congratulations. I'm just curious, sort of when this became a possibility, what was going through your mind?
Obviously I'm very like I'm an admirer of his work, and to be invited to Chile to work on this film, it was an opportunity that, I was very grateful for it, to work with, all the great artists there. Pablo obviously is a guiding force. He is, an important figure of cinema in that place. So through him and through all of our collaborators, I got to learn about a new culture that actually is very interesting. It was very similar to China, so historically what they went through, it's very funny. I mean, I'll share this, me being from China. They were like, I was how do I say this? I was a real communist, you know what I mean? In a country that had its flirtation of communism. And then the Americans came and literally bombed, the democratically elected communist president, and that was a trauma that happened. And then they had this, 30-year dictatorship. So I don't know. I think it's this whole idea of the team sport is not really helping in this situation, in the way that we're all human beings. We wear different team uniforms, and both teams have been pretty shitty. That's how I can say it.
Just
Okay.
congratulations on many different levels,
Okay.
just as a storyteller and as an artist, and the performances throughout the
Thank you.
lesser roles in the film. Everyone does a really terrific job. Just kind of curious. This is for me because I'm a Guy Maddin fan. I hope that
Yeah.
somewhere along the line you might have the opportunity to meet Mr. Maddin. And
He's in the film. You didn't, I don't know if you noticed.
what
He has a cameo.
I was looking for him. I really was looking for him. Let me tell you where I think was he in the hospital?
No, no, no. He's walking the dog. He's
Oh,
like, come on, you little fucker. That's his dog. So there you go.
there you go. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
thank you for indulging me because I'm a huge
yeah.
Guy Maddin fan. So
Yes, yes. It's a very special guy.
we have been speaking with the director of this terrific film called The Mother and the Bear, Johnny Ma. Johnny, thank you so very much for being here.
Bye
Bye.
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 Thank you.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.